So how good would Barcelona's women's team do if they played in the NWSL? As we know, Barcelona is the best team in the Women's Spanish League, and they've won the UEFA Women's Champions League the past 3 years. So obviously they're pretty good. But there's one thing that's very, very different about the NWSL compared to their competition in both Spain and the Women's Champions League. And that's every single team in the NWSL has some top international players and top players across the board. The very worst team in the NWSL is better than the majority of the teams that Barcelona plays against on a regular season. And yes, that includes their Champions League competition. I would argue that the average team that Barcelona plays in the Champions League is like a bottom half of the table team in the NWSL. Now, does this mean that NWSL Cup and Shield winners Orlando Pride would just beat FC Barcelona Women's? Not necessarily. It's actually incredibly difficult to say. And this actually underlies the biggest difference between these European leagues and the NWSL in the United States of America. Now, it is just an objective fact that the NWSL is the overall best women's soccer league in the world. It has by far the most talent, top to bottom, of any league in the world. But the biggest difference between these leagues is in the NWSL, there is a salary cap which causes parity amongst the league. So the first place team to the 14th place team in the NWSL are not spread as far apart as they would be in the 4 big European leagues, the English, the Spanish, the French, and the German leagues. Those leagues do not have a salary cap. So what's happened is that the top 2 to 3 teams in those leagues spend way more than the rest of the league, so they're up at the top. And this is not dissimilar to the men's European leagues, but it's worse on the women's side. For example, in the English Premier League, yes, we have the big 6 teams that are better than everyone else, but the rest of the league is fairly solid. However, on the women's side, it's really just 2 to 3 teams, and then the rest of the league is just not very good at all. It's kind of like if every top women's league in Europe was like the Scottish Premier League on the men's side, where only Celtic and Rangers are actually worth a damn. In the women's leagues, for example, the Spanish league, only Barcelona and somewhat Real Madrid's not even as good, are worth a damn. And then the rest of the league is probably as bad, if not worse, than the worst NWSL team. So what does that mean for if Barcelona were to play in the NWSL? Well, my answer is they would be a good team and they would make the playoffs pretty much every single year. However, they would not win the league every single year, and they might not win the league ever. I don't know. It's a much more difficult prospect for them to come and have to play against these top teams week in, week out, opposed to playing against a bunch of scrubs and also being able to rest players for the big games. That is a very different prospect for a lot of these European teams because they get to take it easy against weaker competition, to focus on the big games in the Champions League. In the NWSL, every game's a big game, so if you take it easy, you lose. And the fact of the matter is, I think a lot of the European teams would start struggling under that kind of pressure, because they've never experienced it before for an entire season. But do I think they're capable of winning the NWSL? Yes. But I think currently the perception of Barcelona's women is better than what they actually are. I think that a whole lot of these players, if they played in the NWSL, which is a stronger league, would have their reputations lower just a little bit. They're not going to be turned into bad players because they're not bad players. But they're also not going to be your first name out of your mouth when you think best player in the world. You're going to have to look at the rest of the players. And the NWSL is where the majority of the best players in the world play.